Hello there, and welcome to this peaceful journey into the age of giants. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight, ready to explore the world of dinosaurs, those magnificent creatures that ruled the Earth for over 160 million years. Wherever you are right now, whatever's on your mind, I want you to take a moment to let it all go. Take a deep breath. Let your body settle into a comfortable position. Tonight, we're going to travel back in time, back to a world so different from ours that it seems almost like another planet. Yet it was right here on Earth. On the same ground we walk today, dinosaurs have fascinated people for generations. Since the first dinosaur fossils were discovered and recognized for what they were in the early 1800s, these ancient creatures have captured our imagination like few other subjects can. They were real animals that lived, breathed, hunted, raised their young, and went about their daily lives in ecosystems we can only reconstruct from fragments of bone and traces left in stone. They weren't monsters or dragons, but animals adapted to their environments in ways both familiar and utterly alien to us. There's something deeply calming about contemplating dinosaurs. Perhaps it's the vast stretch of time that separates us from them, those 66 million years since the last non-avian dinosaurs disappeared. A gulf so wide it makes our personal troubles seem small. Perhaps it's the patience required to study them, the careful work of paleontologists piecing together clues from incomplete fossils, teaching us that understanding comes slowly, one discovery at a time. Or perhaps it's simply the wonder of it all. The realization that our planet was once home to creatures so magnificent and strange that they challenge everything we think we know about what's possible. If you find peace in these explorations, if learning about the ancient world helps you relax and drift toward sleep, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps others discover this content too, building a community of people who find comfort in science and wonder. But for now, just settle in. Close your eyes if you'd like, or let them rest gently. We have hours to spend together walking among giants, and there's no rush at all. Let's begin our journey to the Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs first appeared about 230 million years ago during the Triassic period. At this time, the world looked very different from today. All the continents were joined together in a single massive supercontinent called Pangaea, which stretched from pole to pole and was surrounded by a vast global ocean called Panthalassa. The climate was generally warm and dry, with no ice caps at the poles and vast deserts covering much of the interior of Pangaea. The first dinosaurs were not the giants we often picture, but relatively small, agile creatures, probably no larger than a medium-sized dog. These early dinosaurs walked on two legs and were likely omnivorous or carnivorous, quick and opportunistic, taking advantage of whatever food sources they could find. They shared their world with many other reptiles, including the ancestors of crocodiles, early mammals that were small and shrew-like, and various other archosaurs. The group of reptiles that includes dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and crocodilians. At this early stage, dinosaurs were not dominant. They were just one group among many, and it would take millions of years and a mass extinction event at the end of the Triassic for dinosaurs to rise to prominence. But these humble beginnings contained the seeds of what would become one of the most successful groups of animals ever to walk the Earth. Creatures that would come to dominate terrestrial ecosystems for over 160 million years. The word dinosaur means terrible lizard, but they weren't lizards at all. When British paleontologist Richard Owen coined the term dinosauria in 1842, he chose the Greek words dinos, meaning terrible or fearfully great, and sauros, meaning lizard or reptile. This name stuck, and we've been calling them dinosaurs ever since. But despite the name, dinosaurs were not lizards, and many of them weren't particularly terrible in the sense of being frightening. They were a distinct group of reptiles with unique characteristics that set them apart from all other animals. Dinosaurs had upright posture, with their legs positioned directly beneath their bodies rather than sprawling out to the sides like lizards or crocodiles. This upright stance allowed them to move more efficiently and support larger body sizes. They had distinctive hip structures, with two main groups, the Saurischians, or lizard-hipped dinosaurs, which included the theropods like T-Rex and the long-necked sauropods, and the Ornithischians, or bird-hipped dinosaurs, which included the horned dinosaurs, the armored dinosaurs, and the duck-billed dinosaurs. Ironically, birds, which are the living descendants of dinosaurs, evolved from the lizard-hipped group, not the bird-hipped one. The name dinosaur, while somewhat misleading, has become so embedded in our culture that it's unlikely to change. But it's worth remembering that these were not giant lizards, but something quite different. A unique evolutionary experiment that achieved spectacular success. Dinosaurs lived during the Mesozoic era, which lasted 186 million years. The Mesozoic era is divided into three periods: the Triassic, from 252 to 201 million years ago when dinosaurs first appeared; the Jurassic, from 201 to 145 million years ago, often considered the golden age of dinosaurs; and the Cretaceous, from 145 to 66 million years ago, which ended with the extinction of non-avian dinosaurs. To put this timescale in perspective, the entire Mesozoic era was more than 800 times longer than all of recorded human history. Dinosaurs dominated terrestrial ecosystems throughout this immense span of time, adapting to changing climates, evolving into countless different forms, and spreading across every continent. The world they inhabited changed dramatically during the Mesozoic. Pangaea broke apart during the Jurassic, with continents gradually drifting toward their current positions. Climates shifted from the hot, dry conditions of the Triassic to the warm, humid world of the Jurassic and Cretaceous, when sea levels were high and much of the land was covered with lush vegetation. Flowering plants appeared in the Cretaceous, fundamentally changing terrestrial ecosystems and providing new food sources for herbivorous dinosaurs. Throughout these changes, dinosaurs adapted and thrived, demonstrating remarkable evolutionary flexibility. The Mesozoic was truly the age of dinosaurs, a time when these creatures were the dominant large animals on land, filling ecological roles from tiny insectivores to massive herbivores to apex predators. Not all dinosaurs lived at the same time. This is a common misconception that movies and popular culture often reinforce. People imagine Tyrannosaurus rex fighting Stegosaurus or Triceratops, living alongside Brachiosaurus. But these pairings are chronologically impossible. Stegosaurus lived during the late Jurassic, about 155 to 150 million years ago. Tyrannosaurus rex lived during the very end of the Cretaceous, about 68 to 66 million years ago. That means T-Rex lived closer in time to us than it did to Stegosaurus. More than 80 million years separate these two dinosaurs, a span longer than the entire age of mammals has been so far. Similarly, many of the iconic long-necked sauropods like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus were Jurassic animals, while Triceratops and T-Rex were Cretaceous. The dinosaurs that lived at any given time formed their own distinct ecosystems, and as millions of years passed, old species went extinct and new ones evolved to take their places. Understanding this temporal dimension is crucial to appreciating dinosaur diversity. The Mesozoic wasn't one static age of dinosaurs, but a dynamic, ever-changing era with different dinosaur communities at different times. It's like compressing all of mammalian evolution into a single snapshot and expecting to see saber-toothed cats living alongside modern elephants and early primates all in the same place. Time matters, and the deep time of the dinosaurs contains multiple distinct worlds. Dinosaurs came in an incredible variety of shapes and sizes. When most people think of dinosaurs, they picture large carnivores like Tyrannosaurus rex or massive sauropods like Brachiosaurus, but dinosaur diversity was far greater than these stereotypes suggest. Some dinosaurs were truly enormous, among the largest land animals ever to exist. Argentinosaurus, a sauropod from South America, may have weighed as much as 70 to 100 tons and stretched over 30 meters in length. Spinosaurus, a fish-eating theropod, may have reached lengths of 15 meters or more. But many dinosaurs were small. Microraptor was about the size of a crow, with 4 wings and likely glided between trees. Compsognathus was chicken-sized and probably hunted insects and small vertebrates. Some dinosaurs had elaborate horns and frills, like the ceratopsians. Others had bony armor plates and tail clubs, like Ankylosaurus. Some had long whip-like tails. Others had elaborate head crests that may have been used for display or sound production. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4. Some were covered in scales, others in feathers. Some were herbivores with complex digestive systems and specialized teeth for cropping plants. Others were carnivores with sharp teeth and claws for hunting. Still others were omnivores, eating whatever they could find. This diversity reflects over 160 million years of evolution in changing environments, with dinosaurs adapting to fill nearly every terrestrial ecological niche available. The dinosaur family tree includes hundreds of known genera and probably thousands more that haven't been discovered yet, each representing a unique solution to the challenges of survival in the Mesozoic world. The largest dinosaurs were sauropods, long-necked giants that fed on plants. Sauropods represent perhaps the most distinctive body plan in dinosaur evolution: a small head on an extremely long neck, a massive barrel-shaped body, 4 pillar-like legs, and a long tail. This design allowed them to reach vegetation that other herbivores couldn't access, browsing from treetops like living skyscrapers. The largest sauropods, including Argentinosaurus, Patagodoton, and Dreadnoughtus, weighed as much as 10 to 15 adult elephants and stood as tall as a 4-story building. Supporting such massive bodies required numerous adaptations. Sauropod bones were hollow, filled with air sacs connected to the respiratory system, similar to bird bones. This pneumatic bone structure saved weight while maintaining strength. Their necks, despite being incredibly long, contained only 12 to 19 vertebrae, far fewer than the 70 or so vertebrae in a swan's neck. Each vertebra was large and specially shaped to support the neck's weight. Sauropods had massive legs and feet with thick pads of soft tissue cushioning the bones, similar to elephants. They had enormous digestive systems to process vast quantities of plant material, likely fermenting food in their guts with the help of bacteria. They probably had to eat constantly to fuel their enormous bodies, spending most of their waking hours feeding. Walking among a herd of sauropods would have been an awe-inspiring experience, the ground shaking with each footfall, the air filled with the sound of their breathing and the tearing of vegetation. These were the largest animals ever to walk on land, pushing the limits of what's biologically possible for a terrestrial animal. Sauropods could grow so large partly because they were extremely efficient. Despite their enormous size, sauropods were in many ways more efficient than smaller herbivores. Their long necks allowed them to feed without moving their bodies, reducing energy expenditure. They could reach high branches that other herbivores couldn't access, avoiding competition. Their size protected them from most predators once they reached adulthood. Large body size also has thermal advantages, as bigger animals lose heat more slowly and maintain more stable body temperatures. Sauropods likely had relatively slow metabolisms compared to mammals of similar size, meaning they needed less food per unit of body mass. They probably didn't chew their food, but swallowed it whole, using gastroliths, stones in their stomachs, to help grind plant material. This saved the time and energy required for chewing. Their respiratory systems, with air sacs extending into hollow bones, were highly efficient at extracting oxygen, similar to birds. This may have allowed them to remain active even in the lower oxygen atmosphere that some scientists think characterized parts of the Mesozoic. All these factors combined to make the sauropod body plan extraordinarily successful. Sauropods first appeared in the Triassic, flourished throughout the Jurassic and Cretaceous, and only disappeared when the asteroid struck 66 million years ago. Their success over such a long time span testifies to the effectiveness of their design. Baby sauropods were tiny compared to adults. One of the most striking aspects of sauropod biology was the enormous difference between hatchling size and adult size. A baby sauropod emerging from an egg might weigh just a few kilograms and be small enough to hold in your arms, while its parents weighed tens of tons and stood as tall as buildings. This represents a size difference of more than 10,000 times, far greater than any mammal experiences. A newborn elephant weighs about 100 kilograms, while an adult might weigh 5,000 kilograms, a 50-fold difference. But a baby Argentinosaurus might weigh 5 kilograms, while adults weighed 70,000 kilograms, a 14,000-fold difference. This created interesting challenges for sauropods. Hatchlings and juveniles would have been vulnerable to predators and couldn't have fed in the same way as adults. They may have lived in different habitats, perhaps hiding in dense vegetation, while adults lived in more open areas. Growth from hatchling to adult would have taken decades, with younger animals passing through multiple ecological roles as they grew. Fossil evidence suggests that some sauropods grew rapidly, perhaps adding a ton or more of body mass per year during their peak growth years. This rapid growth required enormous amounts of food and may have been only possible in environments with abundant vegetation. The life cycle of a sauropod, from tiny hatchling to towering adult, represented one of the most dramatic transformations in the animal kingdom. Theropods were the carnivorous dinosaurs, and they ruled as apex predators. Theropods were a diverse group of bipedal, mostly carnivorous dinosaurs that included some of the most famous predators in Earth's history. The group encompasses everything from chicken-sized hunters like Compsognathus to the massive Tyrannosaurus rex and Spinosaurus. What united theropods was their body plan. They walked on two legs, had arms that were usually shorter than their legs, and had skulls adapted for biting and tearing. Most theropods were predators, though some lineages became omnivorous or even herbivorous. Theropod teeth were typically sharp, serrated, and curved backward, perfect for slicing through flesh. Their claws were sharp and curved, useful for grasping prey. Many theropods had excellent vision, with forward-facing eyes that provided depth perception crucial for hunting. They had powerful legs built for running, though top speeds varied greatly depending on size and body plan. Theropods filled numerous ecological niches throughout the Mesozoic. Some were ambush predators, lying in wait for prey. Others were pursuit predators, chasing down victims. Some may have hunted in packs, cooperating to bring down larger prey. Still others scavenged, feeding on animals that died of other causes. The theropods' reign as apex predators lasted the entire age of dinosaurs, and in a sense, it continues today, as birds are the living descendants of theropod dinosaurs. Every time you see a hawk strike a rabbit or an eagle swoop down to catch a fish, you're watching a theropod hunt, continuing a behavior that has been refined over more than 200 million years. Tyrannosaurus rex was one of the largest land predators ever. Tyrannosaurus rex, whose name means tyrant lizard king, lived during the very end of the Cretaceous period, about 68 to 66 million years ago, in what is now western North America. Adult T-Rex measured about 12 meters in length and stood about 4 meters tall at the hips. Weight estimates vary, but most paleontologists think they weighed between 8 and 14 tons, making them among the largest terrestrial carnivores ever to exist. T-Rex had one of the strongest bite forces of any land animal, with estimates ranging from 8,000 to 12,000 pounds of force, enough to crush bone and tear through thick skin and muscle. Their teeth were massive, some as long as bananas, and they replaced them continuously throughout life, growing a new tooth when an old one broke or wore down. T-Rex had tiny arms relative to its body size, and for years scientists debated their function. Recent research suggests the arms were surprisingly muscular and may have been used to help the animal rise from a lying position or to grasp prey during close quarters fighting. T-Rex had excellent vision, possibly the best of any dinosaur, with eyes positioned to provide binocular vision and depth perception. They also had a keen sense of smell, with large olfactory bulbs in the brain suggesting they could detect scents from long distances. This combination of senses would have made T-Rex a formidable hunter and possibly also a scavenger. Able to locate dead animals from afar, T-Rex represents the peak of large theropod evolution, a predator so powerful and well-adapted that it dominated its ecosystem completely during its relatively brief existence. Some scientists think T-Rex hunted in family groups. For many years, paleontologists assumed that T-Rex, like most large carnivores today, was primarily solitary, with adults coming together only to mate. But recent fossil discoveries have challenged this view. Several sites have been found where multiple T-Rex individuals of different ages died together, preserved in the same layer of rock. While this could be coincidence, some scientists interpret it as evidence that T-Rex may have lived in family groups. If true, this would have significant implications for understanding their behavior. Group living in predators often indicates cooperative hunting, where multiple individuals work together to bring down prey larger or more dangerous than any single hunter could manage alone. Young T-Rex had different body proportions than adults, with longer legs relative to body size, suggesting they may have been faster and more agile. In a family group, young individuals could have chased prey toward larger, more powerful adults who delivered the killing bite. Alternatively, groups could have defended kill sites from other predators or scavengers more effectively than lone individuals. Group living would also have implications for parenting behavior, suggesting that adults protected and perhaps fed juveniles for extended periods. The evidence for group behavior in T-Rex is still debated, and not all paleontologists are convinced. But the possibility that these apex predators may have had complex social lives adds another layer of fascination to an already remarkable animal. It reminds us that behavior doesn't fossilize easily, and there's much about dinosaur lives that we'll never know for certain, but can only infer from the clues they left behind. Spinosaurus was even larger than T-Rex and hunted in water. For decades, Tyrannosaurus rex held the title of largest terrestrial carnivore, but discoveries over the past few decades have revealed an even larger theropod, Spinosaurus. This bizarre dinosaur lived about 95 million years ago in what is now North Africa, during a time when the region was covered by lush rivers and swamps rather than desert. Spinosaurus was longer than T-Rex, possibly reaching 15 to 16 meters from snout to tail. It had a crocodile-like skull with conical teeth suited for catching fish, and its jaws were designed to resist the twisting forces that come from wrestling with slippery prey in water. Most spectacularly, Spinosaurus had enormous neural spines extending from its back vertebrae, forming a sail-like structure that could be up to 1.7 meters tall. The function of this sail is debated, with hypotheses including thermal regulation, fat storage, or visual display to attract mates or intimidate rivals. Recent fossil discoveries have revealed that Spinosaurus had dense bones like those of aquatic animals, paddle-like feet, and a tail that was tall and flat, similar to that of a newt, perfect for swimming. These features strongly suggest that Spinosaurus spent much of its time in water, hunting fish and other aquatic prey. It may have been the only truly semi-aquatic dinosaur, a Mesozoic equivalent of a crocodile or grizzly bear fishing for salmon. Spinosaurus challenges our assumptions about what dinosaurs could be and reminds us that these animals adapted to fill niches we might not have predicted. The existence of a dinosaur that hunted primarily in water expands our understanding of the diversity and ecological roles of these ancient creatures. Many theropods had feathers, not scales. One of the most significant discoveries in paleontology over the past few decades has been the realization that many theropod dinosaurs, including the ancestors of birds, were covered not in scales, but in feathers. The first hint came in the 1990s with the discovery of feathered dinosaurs in China, preserved in fine-grained rock that captured details usually lost in fossilization. These fossils showed small theropods covered in simple, hair-like feathers, quite different from the complex flight feathers of modern birds. Since then, dozens of feathered dinosaur species have been discovered, revealing that feathers were widespread among theropods, particularly the smaller ones. Even some large theropods, including relatives of Tyrannosaurus rex, have been found with evidence of feathery coverings, at least when young. Feathers likely evolved first not for flight, but for insulation, keeping small dinosaurs warm, or for display, with colorful plumage used to attract mates or intimidate rivals. The presence of feathers changes how we visualize these animals. Instead of the scaly, lizard-skinned monsters of older depictions, we should imagine many theropods as fluffy or sleek, covered in feathers that may have been brightly colored or patterned. Some fossils preserve enough detail that scientists can analyze the shape of pigment-containing structures called melanosomes and reconstruct the original colors. One small dinosaur, Sinosauropteryx, had a striped tail, orange and white like a tabby cat. Another Microraptor was iridescent black, like a crow. These discoveries have revolutionized our understanding of dinosaurs, revealing them as more dynamic and colorful than anyone imagined. They've also strengthened the connection between dinosaurs and birds, showing that feathers were a dinosaur invention that birds simply inherited and refined. Birds are dinosaurs, the only dinosaurs that survived the extinction. This statement often surprises people, but it's an established scientific fact. Birds are not descendants of dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs. Birds belong to the theropod group, specifically to a branch called Monoraptora, which includes Velociraptor and other agile predators. The transition from non-avian dinosaurs to birds was gradual, involving changes in body size, bone structure, feather development, and flight capabilities. Archaeopteryx, discovered in Germany in rocks about 150 million years old, was one of the first clear transitional forms, with teeth, clawed fingers, and a long, bony tail like a dinosaur, but with wings and feathers like a bird. Since Archaeopteryx, many other transitional fossils have been found, filling in the picture of how flight evolved. Birds became progressively more specialized for flight, with lighter bones, a keeled breastbone for attaching flight muscles, and a short tail with a fan of feathers rather than a long, bony tail. When the asteroid struck 66 million years ago, it caused the extinction of all large dinosaurs and most other species on Earth, but some small flying birds survived. These survivors went on to diversify into the more than 10,000 species of birds we have today. So when you watch a sparrow, you're looking at a living dinosaur, a direct descendant of the Mesozoic giants. Birds carry on the dinosaur lineage, proving that dinosaurs didn't really go extinct. They just became smaller, grew wings, and learned to sing. This connection between dinosaurs and birds has profound implications for how we understand evolutionary relationships and the continuity of life across extinction events. Velociraptors were much smaller than portrayed in movies. Thanks to popular movies, Velociraptor has become one of the most famous dinosaurs, but the film depictions are quite inaccurate. The real Velociraptor lived about 75 million years ago in what is now Mongolia and was about the size of a turkey, standing about half a meter tall at the hip and measuring about 2 meters long, including the tail. It weighed around 15 kilograms, about as much as a large dog. The movie versions were based more on a larger relative called Deinonychus, which was about 3 meters long and weighed about 70 kilograms, though even Deinonychus wasn't as large as the film depictions. Velociraptor and its relatives, collectively called dromaeosaurids or raptors, were covered in feathers, not scaly skin. They had a large sickle-shaped claw on each foot, which they likely used to pin down prey or deliver slashing wounds. Despite their small size, Velociraptor was probably a formidable predator, fast and agile with sharp teeth and claws. There is some evidence that dromaeosaurids may have hunted in packs, as several individuals have been found together associated with larger prey animals, though this is debated. Velociraptor had relatively large eyes and a big brain for its body size, suggesting it was intelligent and had good vision. Its long, stiff tail helped it balance while running and making quick turns. While the real Velociraptor might not have been as terrifying as its Hollywood counterpart, it was still a successful predator, well adapted to its environment. The exaggeration in popular media reminds us to be critical consumers of information and to distinguish between scientific understanding and artistic interpretation, herbivorous. Dinosaurs had many adaptations for eating plants. While carnivorous theropods get much of the attention, herbivorous dinosaurs were far more diverse and numerous. Plant-eating dinosaurs face different challenges than predators, as plants are less nutritious than meat and harder to digest. To cope, herbivorous dinosaurs evolved numerous adaptations. Many had specialized teeth, flat and broad, for grinding or cropping vegetation. Some had hundreds of teeth arranged in dental batteries, where worn teeth were continuously replaced by new ones growing in from below. Duck-billed dinosaurs or hadrosaurs had up to 1,000 teeth in their mouths at any one time. Sauropods had simple, peg-like or spoon-shaped teeth that stripped leaves from branches but didn't chew, relying on gastroliths and gut fermentation to break down food. Many herbivores had beaks, either entirely replacing the teeth at the front of the mouth or working in combination with teeth further back. Beaks were useful for cropping and gathering vegetation. Herbivorous dinosaurs also had large guts to house the bacteria and other microorganisms that actually digest plant cellulose, which animals can't break down on their own. Some herbivores, particularly the ornithischians, had cheeks, pouches of flesh that held food in the mouth while chewing, a feature that most reptiles lack. Many herbivores had elaborate head structures, horns, frills, crests, and spikes, which may have been used for defense against predators, for display to attract mates, or for fighting with rivals of the same species. The diversity of herbivorous dinosaur adaptations reflects the variety of plants available and the different strategies for exploiting them. Triceratops was one of the last dinosaurs and one of the most common. Triceratops, whose name means three-horned face, lived at the very end of the Cretaceous period, sharing its time and place with Tyrannosaurus rex in what is now western North America. Triceratops was a large herbivore, about 8 to 9 meters long and weighing 6 to 12 tons, roughly the size of a large elephant. Its most distinctive features were its three horns, two long ones above the eyes and a shorter one on the nose, and an enormous bony frill that extended back from the skull over the neck. The frill was edged with small bony projections called epioccipitals. For years, scientists debated the function of Triceratops' horns and frill. Initially thought to be primarily defensive, protecting against predators like T-Rex, recent research suggests they were more important for display and combat with other Triceratops. Fossil skulls show evidence of healed wounds consistent with horn strikes, suggesting that Triceratops males fought each other, perhaps over mates or territory, locking horns like modern rams or deer. The frill may have been brightly colored or patterned, making Triceratops look larger and more intimidating. Triceratops is one of the most commonly found dinosaur fossils in late Cretaceous rocks of North America, suggesting it was abundant. Paleontologists have found specimens of all ages, from juveniles to fully mature adults, allowing detailed study of how they grew and developed. Triceratops represents the peak of ceratopsian evolution, the culmination of tens of millions of years of horn and frill development in this group. It was among the last dinosaurs to exist before the mass extinction, one of the final representatives of a lineage that had been successful for millions of years. Some dinosaurs had elaborate head crests, and they may have used them to make sounds. Among the most distinctive of all dinosaurs were the hadrosaurs, or duck-billed dinosaurs, particularly those with elaborate bony crests on their heads. Parasaurolophus had a long, backward curving crest that could extend more than a meter behind the skull. Corythosaurus had a tall, rounded crest. Lambeosaurus had a crest with a forward-pointing spike. For years, scientists puzzled over the function of these crests. Some thought they were snorkels for breathing underwater, but the crests don't have openings at the end. Others thought they enhanced the sense of smell. The current leading hypothesis is that the crests functioned as resonating chambers for producing sounds. CT scans of crest interiors reveal hollow passages connected to the nasal cavity. When air passed through these passages, they would have produced low-frequency sounds, like a trombone or tuba. Different crest shapes would have produced different sounds, allowing species recognition and individual communication. Some scientists have even attempted to reconstruct these sounds using computer models and physical replicas, producing deep, haunting calls that might have echoed across Cretaceous landscapes. Hadrosaurs may have called to each other across distances, warning of predators, attracting mates, or keeping herds together. The idea of dinosaurs producing complex vocalizations adds a sonic dimension to the Mesozoic world that we usually don't consider. Imagine a Cretaceous dawn filled with the bellowing calls of hadrosaurs, the roars of carnivores, and the rustling of countless other creatures going about their lives. Ankylosaurus was a living tank covered in armor. Ankylosaurus represents the extreme of defensive adaptation in dinosaurs. This herbivore, which lived at the end of the Cretaceous alongside Triceratops and T-Rex, was about 6 to 8 meters long and weighed perhaps 6 tons. It was broad and low to the ground, with short, sturdy legs. The most remarkable feature was its armor. Bony plates called osteoderms embedded in the skin covered its back, flanks, and even its eyelids. These plates varied in size and shape, with larger plates along the midline and smaller ones filling in between, creating an almost impenetrable shield. Spikes projected from the sides and bony nodules covered the neck. The tail ended in a massive bony club, formed from fused vertebrae and osteoderms, which could be swung with considerable force. Experiments and computer models suggest that a tail club strike could break bone and deliver a devastating blow to an attacking predator. Ankylosaurs likely used their tail clubs not just against predators, but also in competition with each other, possibly fighting over territory or mates. With its heavy armor, Ankylosaurus was probably slow and couldn't outrun predators. Instead, it relied on its defenses, perhaps crouching down when threatened to protect its unarmored belly and lashing out with its tail club if a predator got too close. This strategy was evidently successful, as Ankylosaurs as a group existed for tens of millions of years. Ankylosaurus was the largest and most heavily armored of all ankylosaurs, representing the culmination of this defensive strategy. Stegosaurus had plates along its back and spikes on its tail. Stegosaurus is one of the most recognizable dinosaurs, with its distinctive row of large flat plates running along its back and 4 long spikes at the end of its tail. Stegosaurus lived during the late Jurassic, about 155 to 150 million years ago, in what is now western North America. It was a large herbivore, about 9 meters long and weighing around 5 tons. For more than a century, scientists have debated the function of Stegosaurus's back plates. Early hypotheses suggested they were defensive, armor against predators, but the plates are relatively thin and fragile, not well suited for protection. Another idea was thermoregulation. The plates were covered in skin rich in blood vessels, and by adjusting blood flow, Stegosaurus could absorb heat when cold or dissipate heat when hot. Using the plates like solar panels or radiators, recent studies suggest the plates were primarily for display, making Stegosaurus look larger and more impressive, useful for attracting mates or intimidating rivals. The plates may have been brightly colored or flushed red with blood during displays. The tail spikes, called the thagomizer, a term coined by a cartoonist and later adopted by paleontologists, were definitely weapons. Several Allosaurus fossils show puncture wounds consistent with Stegosaurus tail spikes, proving that Stegosaurus could defend itself effectively. Interestingly, Stegosaurus had a very small brain for its body size, which led to the myth that it had a second brain in its hips. This isn't true. What it had was an enlarged nerve center called the glycogen body, which many dinosaurs possessed. Despite its small brain, Stegosaurus was a successful animal that thrived for millions of years. Iguanodon was one of the first dinosaurs ever discovered and named. The story of Iguanodon is intertwined with the early history of paleontology. In 1822, fossilized teeth were discovered in England by Mary Ann Mantell, wife of geologist Gideon Mantell, though the exact circumstances are disputed. Gideon recognized that the teeth resembled those of modern iguanas, but were much larger, suggesting they came from a giant reptile. In 1825, he named the creature Iguanodon, meaning iguana tooth. This was only the second dinosaur to be formally named after Megalosaurus. Early reconstructions of Iguanodon were quite inaccurate. One famous mistake was placing a thumb spike on the nose, like a rhinoceros horn. This error persisted for decades until more complete skeletons were discovered in a Belgian coal mine in 1878. These spectacular fossils, dozens of complete or nearly complete skeletons, revealed Iguanodon's true appearance, a large herbivore that walked on two legs or sometimes on all fours, with a distinctive conical thumb spike. These spikes were likely defensive weapons used to ward off predators or possibly in combat with other iguanodons. Adult iguanodons were about 10 meters long and weighed around 3 to 4 tons. They had long hind legs and shorter arms, suggesting they spent most of their time on two legs, but could drop to all fours when feeding or resting. Their hands were remarkable, with 3 middle fingers that bore hooves or claws for walking, a thumb spike, and a flexible 5th finger that could grasp vegetation. Iguanodon lived during the early Cretaceous, about 125 million years ago, and was one of the most common herbivores in Europe at that time. The discovery of Iguanodon in the early 19th century helped establish the existence of dinosaurs and sparked public fascination with these ancient creatures. It played a crucial role in the development of paleontology as a science, showing that the Earth had once been inhabited by creatures unlike anything alive today. Pachycephalosaurus had an incredibly thick skull dome. Among the strangest dinosaurs were the pachycephalosaurs, or thick-headed lizards, bipedal herbivores, or omnivores, with extraordinarily thick skulls. Pachycephalosaurus itself, which lived at the end of the Cretaceous, had a skull dome up to 25 centimeters thick, made of solid bone. The entire animal was about 4.5 meters long and weighed around 450 kilograms, but its most distinctive feature was that massive head. For years, paleontologists assumed these thick skulls were used in headbutting contests, like modern rams or bighorn sheep. Males would charge at each other, slamming their reinforced heads together in battles for dominance or mates. The skulls seemed perfectly designed for this, with a dome shape that would distribute impact forces and thick bone to absorb shock. However, recent studies have questioned this interpretation. Some scientists point out that the skull domes show little evidence of impact damage, and the dome shape might actually deflect rather than absorb blows. An alternative hypothesis suggests that instead of head-to-head butting, Pachycephalosaurs engaged in flank butting, striking each other's sides with their thick skulls, or perhaps used their heads to push against each other in strength contests. Some scientists even suggest the domes were primarily for display, making males look more impressive to females or intimidating to rivals. Whatever the exact behavior, the thick skulls clearly had some social function. The debate over pachycephalosaur behavior illustrates how difficult it can be to interpret extinct animals' lives from their bones alone. Behavior doesn't fossilize, and we must make educated guesses based on anatomy, comparisons with living animals, and sometimes fragmentary evidence of injuries or pathologies. Many dinosaurs were much faster than humans. When we picture dinosaurs, we often imagine slow, lumbering giants, but many dinosaurs were actually quite fast. Speed depends on body proportions, particularly leg length and musculature, and paleontologists can estimate running speeds by analyzing skeletal structure and creating computer models. Small theropods were likely the fastest dinosaurs. Ornithomimosaurs, the ostrich mimics, had long legs, light bodies, and were built for speed. Estimates suggest they could run at 60 to 80 kilometers per hour, faster than any human and comparable to modern ostriches or racehorses. Even larger predators like Allosaurus and Tyrannosaurus could probably move surprisingly quickly. While there's debate about T-Rex's top speed, most scientists think it could reach at least 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, which doesn't sound impressive until you remember it weighed 8 tons. A charging T-Rex would be absolutely terrifying, combining the mass of an elephant with speeds faster than most humans can run. Medium-sized herbivores like hadrosaurs were also built for speed with long hind legs and light bodies, probably capable of running 40 to 50 kilometers per hour to escape predators. The largest sauropods were slower, probably walking at speeds similar to elephants, around 5 to 10 kilometers per hour, though they may have been capable of brief bursts of faster movement when threatened. Speed was crucial for survival in the Mesozoic, whether for catching prey, escaping predators, or keeping up with a herd. The variation in dinosaur speeds reflects their diverse lifestyles and ecological roles. Some dinosaurs lived in herds and migrated long distances. Evidence from numerous fossil sites shows that many dinosaurs were social animals that lived in groups. Trackways, fossilized footprints sometimes show dozens or even hundreds of individuals traveling together, all moving in the same direction. Bone beds, deposits containing the fossils of many individuals of the same species, suggest that these animals died together, possibly in a natural disaster like a flood or drought. Hadrosaurs, ceratopsians, and sauropods commonly show evidence of herding behavior. Living in herds provides several advantages: more eyes to watch for predators, shared defense, and social learning where young animals learn from older, more experienced individuals. Some sites show age segregation, with juveniles grouped together separately from adults, suggesting complex social structures. There is also evidence that some dinosaurs migrated seasonally, moving between feeding and breeding grounds, just like modern wildebeests or caribou. Trackways in Alaska show that hadrosaurs lived in the Arctic, where winters would have been dark and cold. These dinosaurs may have migrated south for winter, or endured the harsh conditions, perhaps with adaptations like feathers or hibernation-like states. The idea of massive herds of dinosaurs migrating across ancient landscapes is humbling. Imagining the ground shaking under thousands of feet, the air filled with calls and bellows. A procession of giants that dwarfs any modern animal migration, dinosaur nests show they cared for their young. One of the most significant discoveries in dinosaur paleontology was finding fossilized nests with eggs, embryos, and juveniles, revealing that dinosaurs built nests and cared for their young. Behaviors we usually associate with birds and mammals, rather than reptiles. The first major discovery came in the 1920s in Mongolia, where expeditions found nests of Protoceratops and the theropod oviraptor. For decades, scientists thought oviraptor was an egg thief, stealing Protoceratops eggs, but later discoveries showed that oviraptor was actually sitting on its own nest, protecting its eggs like a bird. In the 1970s, paleontologist Jack Horner discovered a site in Montana with Maiasaura nests, eggs, and babies of different ages. The nests were built in colonies, spaced about a body length apart, suggesting social nesting. The babies' bones showed they couldn't walk well when hatched, indicating they remained in the nest and were fed by parents. This discovery revolutionized understanding of dinosaur behavior, showing that at least some dinosaurs had parental care as sophisticated as modern birds. Since then, numerous other nesting sites have been found for different dinosaur species. Some built mound nests with vegetation that decomposed and warmed the eggs. Others dug shallow scrapes and covered eggs with sand. Many theropods sat directly on their eggs to incubate them, with their arms positioned to cover and protect the eggs. Parental care in dinosaurs shouldn't surprise us, given that birds, their descendants, show extensive parental behavior. But discovering direct fossil evidence transformed these ancient creatures from simple reptilian egg layers into devoted parents, adding another dimension to their lives. Dinosaur eggs came in many shapes and sizes. Dinosaurs laid eggs with hard shells, like birds, and these eggs varied tremendously depending on the species. The smallest known dinosaur eggs are only about 3 centimeters long, laid by tiny theropods. The largest eggs, probably laid by large sauropods, were about 60 centimeters long, roughly the size of basketballs. However, even the largest dinosaur eggs were relatively small compared to the adults that laid them, creating a problem. How do you lay an egg that's large enough to produce a viable hatchling, but not so large that it can't be laid? This constraint limited how large dinosaur eggs could be, and it's one reason why sauropod babies were so tiny relative to adults. Egg shape also varied. Most dinosaur eggs were elongated ovals, but some were nearly spherical. Theropod eggs were often elongated and asymmetric, similar to bird eggs. Shell thickness varied too, with some eggs having very thin shells while others were quite robust. The texture of the shell surface ranged from smooth to highly ornamented with ridges and bumps. By analyzing the microscopic structure of egg shells, paleontologists can sometimes determine which species laid particular eggs. Eggs are also found in different arrangements. Some dinosaurs laid their eggs in neat circular patterns, others in lines or clusters. Some buried their eggs in vegetation or sand, while others kept them partially exposed. The diversity of dinosaur eggs reflects the diversity of dinosaur species and their varied reproductive strategies. Fossils show that some dinosaurs suffered from diseases and injuries. Dinosaurs weren't invulnerable giants, but living animals that got sick and injured, just like modern creatures. Paleontologists have found abundant evidence of disease and trauma in dinosaur fossils. Broken bones are common, showing healed fractures from falls, fights, or accidents. The healing process often left thick calluses of bone around the break site. Some fractures healed poorly, leaving the bone crooked or causing arthritis in nearby joints. Bite marks from predators are found on many fossils, sometimes healed, showing the animal survived the attack and sometimes unhealed, possibly indicating the fatal injury. Infections are also visible in bones, appearing as abnormal growths or erosions. Some dinosaurs suffered from bone infections called osteomyelitis, possibly caused by wounds that became infected. Arthritis, inflammation of joints, has been found in many dinosaur skeletons, particularly older individuals, suggesting dinosaurs lived long enough to experience age-related degeneration. Tumors, both benign and possibly cancerous, have been identified in dinosaur bones. One famous example is a Gorgosaurus with what appears to be osteosarcoma, a type of bone cancer common in modern large animals. Dental problems, including abscesses and tooth loss, affected some dinosaurs. One Tyrannosaurus rex specimen shows evidence of a parasitic infection in its jaw, possibly caused by a protozoan similar to those that cause bird diseases today. These pathologies humanize dinosaurs, showing they faced many of the same health challenges as modern animals. They also provide windows into dinosaur behavior and lifestyle, revealing how long individuals lived, what kinds of dangers they faced, and how their bodies responded to stress and injury. The largest dinosaur skull belonged to Pentaceratops. Ceratopsians, the horned dinosaurs, had some of the largest skulls of any land animals. These skulls were elongated and massive, with much of the length coming from enormous frills that extended back from the head over the neck. Pentaceratops, whose name means five-horned face, had one of the largest skulls, measuring about 3 meters long, roughly the length of a small car. Most of this length was the frill, which was made of thin bone, and may have been covered with brightly colored skin for display. The actual cranium, the part housing the brain, was much smaller. These giant skulls served multiple purposes. The horns and frill were likely used in display and combat with rivals. The frill protected the neck from predator attacks, and the massive jaw muscles attached to the frill allowed powerful biting forces needed to process tough plant material. Despite their enormous size, these skulls were relatively lightweight, with large openings called fenestrae that reduced weight. The largest known Pentaceratops skull weighs only about 200 kilograms, despite being 3 meters long. Supporting such a massive head required strong neck muscles and vertebrae, and ceratopsians had specially reinforced necks. The evolution of these elaborate skull structures in ceratopsians represents one of the most dramatic examples of ornamental evolution in vertebrates, where sexual selection and social competition drove the development of increasingly exaggerated features. Dinosaurs lived in diverse environments, from deserts to swamps. The Mesozoic world was climatically different from today, generally warmer with no ice caps at the poles, but it still had diverse environments, and dinosaurs adapted to live in all of them. Some dinosaurs lived in lush, humid forests with rivers and swamps. like the Morrison Formation of the late Jurassic in North America, home to Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, and various sauropods. Others lived in drier, more open environments with scattered trees and shrubs. The Gobi Desert region during the Cretaceous was arid, yet it supported diverse dinosaur communities, including Protoceratops, Velociraptor, and Oviraptor, whose fossils are found in ancient sand dune deposits. Some dinosaurs lived in coastal environments with beaches and lagoons, like those preserved in the famous Solnhofen limestone of Germany, where Archaeopteryx was found. Others inhabited floodplains with seasonal rivers and lakes. Remarkably, some dinosaurs lived in polar regions. Fossil sites in Alaska and Australia from times when those regions were within the Antarctic and Arctic circles have yielded dinosaur bones, showing that some species could survive months of darkness and cold temperatures, though not as cold as today's polar regions, since there were no ice caps. These polar dinosaurs may have had feathers for insulation, hibernated, or migrated to warmer areas for winter. The ability of dinosaurs to inhabit such diverse environments, from tropical rainforests to polar twilight zones, demonstrates their adaptability and evolutionary success. They weren't just one-trick animals suited to a single environment, but a diverse group capable of thriving almost anywhere on land. Colors of some dinosaurs have been reconstructed from fossils. For most of paleontology's history, the colors of dinosaurs were pure speculation. Artists could paint them any color they wanted because there was no way to know. That changed in the 2000s when scientists discovered that in exceptionally preserved fossils, microscopic structures called melanosomes could still be seen. Melanosomes are organelles in cells that contain pigments, and their shape correlates with color. Long and narrow melanosomes produce black and brown colors, while rounded ones produce reddish and yellowish tones. By examining melanosomes in fossilized feathers and skin, paleontologists can reconstruct actual colors. The first dinosaur to have its color scientifically reconstructed was Sinosauropteryx, a small feathered theropod from China. Analysis revealed it had a striped tail, orange and white, and a darker back with a lighter belly, a countershading pattern that provides camouflage. Anchiornis, a small four-winged dinosaur, was reconstructed as having black and white wings with a red crest on its head. Microraptor was iridescent black like a raven, with glossy feathers that would have shimmered in sunlight. Psittacosaurus, a small ceratopsian, had countershading and may have had a cloaca that was more colorful, possibly used in display. These reconstructions show that at least some dinosaurs were colorful, not the drab browns and greens often depicted. Bright colors make sense for display, species recognition, and camouflage. While we can only determine colors for species with exceptional preservation, these few examples suggest that the Mesozoic world was as colorful as modern ecosystems, filled with dinosaurs sporting patterns and hues as varied as today's birds and reptiles. Some dinosaurs had bizarre and mysterious features. The more we learn about dinosaurs, the more we discover how strange some of them were. Therizinosaurus had the longest claws of any animal ever, with individual claws reaching nearly a meter in length. For years, these massive claws were a mystery, leading to speculation about aquatic lifestyles or predatory behavior. Eventually, more complete fossils revealed that Therizinosaurus was a strange, pot-bellied herbivore that likely used its claws to pull down branches while feeding, like a giant ground sloth. Deinocheirus, known only from enormous arms for decades, was finally revealed to be a huge, hump-backed omnivore with a duck-like bill. Negersaurus had a bizarre skull with over 500 teeth arranged in rows, forming a wide, flat muzzle that worked like a lawnmower, cropping vegetation close to the ground. Amargasaurus had two parallel rows of tall spines along its neck, possibly supporting a skin sail or just protruding as dramatic spikes. Carnotaurus had tiny arms, even smaller relative to body size than T. rex, and horns above its eyes, giving it a demonic appearance. Yichi was a pigeon-sized dinosaur with membranous wings supported by a long finger-like bone, making it look like a bat or wyvern. These bizarre features remind us that evolution doesn't follow predictable paths, and that dinosaurs experimented with body plans and adaptations we might never have imagined. Some of these strange features have clear functions, while others remain mysterious, adding to the fascination of paleontology, where every new discovery can surprise us. Dinosaur brains varied greatly in size and complexity. When people think about dinosaur intelligence, they often imagine dim-witted creatures with tiny brains, but the reality is more nuanced. Brain size relative to body size, called the encephalization quotient, varied considerably among dinosaurs. Sauropods had very small brains for their body size, with brains weighing perhaps only 100 to 200 grams in animals weighing 20 tons or more. This led to the myth that they were incredibly stupid, but small brains don't necessarily mean lack of intelligence. Sauropods didn't need large brains for their lifestyle of finding and eating plants, and their success for over 100 million years suggests their brains were adequate for their needs. Theropods, particularly the smaller, more agile ones, had relatively larger brains. Troodon, a human-sized theropod, had one of the largest brain-to-body ratios of any dinosaur, comparable to modern birds. Its brain structure suggests enhanced vision, coordination, and possibly problem-solving abilities. Dromaeosaurids like Velociraptor also had relatively large brains. The structure of dinosaur brains can be studied using CT scans of skulls, creating endocasts that show the shape of the brain cavity. These reveal that dinosaur brains had well-developed regions for sensory processing and motor control. Some dinosaurs had enlarged olfactory bulbs, suggesting a keen sense of smell. Others had large optic lobes, indicating good vision. The variation in dinosaur brain size and structure reflects their diverse lifestyles and ecological roles. While no dinosaur was likely as intelligent as modern primates, some were probably as smart as modern birds or crocodiles, capable of complex behaviors like social interactions, parenting, and flexible hunting or foraging strategies. Dinosaur metabolism is still debated among scientists. One of the longest-standing debates in paleontology concerns whether dinosaurs were warm-blooded, endothermic like mammals and birds, cold-blooded, ectothermic like reptiles, or something in between. The question matters because metabolism affects activity levels, growth rates, food requirements, and behavior. Early paleontologists assumed dinosaurs were cold-blooded because they were reptiles. But in the 1960s and 70s, scientists began arguing that dinosaurs showed evidence of warm-bloodedness, their upright posture, fast growth rates, evidence of active lifestyles, and the presence of predator-prey ratios similar to modern mammals all suggested elevated metabolisms. Birds, the descendants of dinosaurs, are warm-blooded, suggesting their ancestors might have been too. However, warm-bloodedness requires enormous amounts of food, which seems problematic for massive sauropods. Current thinking suggests that dinosaurs may have had a range of metabolic strategies. Small theropods were likely warm-blooded, with high metabolic rates and possibly feather insulation. Large dinosaurs may have practiced mesothermy, where their large size allowed them to maintain stable body temperatures even with lower metabolic rates, a phenomenon called gigantothermy. Some dinosaurs may have had intermediate metabolisms, neither fully warm nor cold-blooded. Evidence from bone growth patterns, oxygen isotopes in bones and teeth, and comparisons with modern animals all inform this debate. The truth is probably that dinosaurs were metabolically diverse, just as they were anatomically diverse, with different species having different physiologies suited to their lifestyles and environments. Fossilization is extremely rare, so most dinosaurs left no trace. When we think about all the dinosaurs that ever lived, the fossils we've found represent an infinitesimally small fraction. Fossilization requires specific conditions, rapid burial, minimal scavenging, and the right chemical environment to mineralize bones rather than let them decay. Most animals that die are completely consumed by scavengers or decay fully, leaving nothing. Even when bones are preserved, they must survive millions of years of geological processes, weathering, erosion, and plate tectonics, without being destroyed. Then they must be exposed by erosion at just the right time when humans are around to find them, and someone must actually notice them. Given all these requirements, it's estimated that far less than 1%, possibly less than 1/10 of 1%, of all dinosaur species that ever existed have been discovered and named. We've found about 1,000 dinosaur genera, and perhaps 10,000 to 15,000 species if we count all the variations within genera. But dinosaurs existed for 165 million years, so even if species turnover was slow, there must have been tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of species over that time span. Most lived and died leaving no trace, their existence lost to time. This means that the dinosaurs we know, the famous ones that appear in books and movies, are just a tiny, biased sample. We're most likely to find fossils of large animals in areas with good preservation conditions, so small dinosaurs from upland environments are underrepresented. Every time someone finds a new dinosaur fossil, they're revealing a creature that by all odds should have been lost forever, a small victory against the ravages of time. Dinosaurs lived on every continent, including Antarctica. During the Mesozoic era, the continents were arranged differently than today, but dinosaurs managed to spread across all land masses. Fossils have been found on every continent, including Antarctica. In fact, some of the most interesting discoveries have come from Antarctica. In 1991, scientists discovered Cryolophosaurus, a crested theropod in Antarctica's transantarctic mountains. This was significant because it showed that carnivorous dinosaurs lived in polar regions. Other discoveries include sauropods and ornithischians, indicating diverse dinosaur communities. During the time these dinosaurs lived, Antarctica was not at the South Pole, but further north and had a much warmer climate, with forests rather than ice. Still, it would have experienced months of darkness during winter, making it a challenging environment. Dinosaurs in Antarctica would have needed adaptations to cope with these conditions, possibly including feathers, hibernation, or migration. Fossils from other continents reveal how dinosaurs adapted to local conditions. In Africa, massive sauropods like Paralititan thrived in what were floodplains and river systems. In South America, unique groups like the abelisaurids, strange short-faced theropods, evolved in isolation after the continent separated from Africa. In Australia, small ornithopods dominated, with few large predators discovered so far. In Asia, the Gobi Desert has yielded spectacular fossils preserved in sandstorms, capturing dinosaurs in their moment of death. Europe during the late Jurassic was an archipelago, a collection of islands, and the dinosaurs found there tend to be smaller than their mainland relatives, an example of island dwarfism. The global distribution of dinosaurs shows they were successful colonizers, able to cross barriers and adapt to diverse environments. It also reveals how plate tectonics and changing geography influenced evolution as isolated populations developed into unique species. The fact that we can find dinosaur fossils on every continent, from the frozen wastes of Antarctica to the scorching deserts of Africa to the temperate forests of North America, testifies to their remarkable adaptability and success. The asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs was unimaginably powerful. The extinction event that ended the Cretaceous period and wiped out all non-avian dinosaurs was triggered by an asteroid, or comet about 10 to 15 kilometers in diameter, striking Earth near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact occurred about 66 million years ago, creating the Chicxulub crater, which is about 150 kilometers wide and buried beneath sediment. The energy released was equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons, somewhere between 100 million and 1 billion megatons of TNT. The impact vaporized the asteroid and excavated a hole in the Earth's crust, throwing millions of tons of rock, dust, and vaporized material into the atmosphere. The debris launched into space fell back to Earth, heating the atmosphere so much that it may have briefly turned the sky into an oven, igniting wildfires across the planet. Massive earthquakes, far stronger than any in recorded history, shook the globe. Tsunamis hundreds of meters tall raced across oceans, scouring coastlines. The impact also triggered volcanic activity and may have accelerated ongoing eruptions in India's Deccan Traps, adding volcanic gases to the atmospheric chaos. The most devastating long-term effect was the dust and aerosols thrown into the upper atmosphere, which blocked sunlight for months or possibly years. Without sunlight, photosynthesis stopped, plants died, herbivores starved, and the food chains collapsed. Global temperatures plummeted in an impact winter. When sunlight finally returned, the planet was devastated. About 75% of all species went extinct, including all dinosaurs except birds, most marine reptiles, and many other groups. It was one of the worst days in Earth's history, and its effects reverberated for millions of years. Life took millions of years to recover after the extinction. The immediate aftermath of the asteroid impact was a hellscape. Fires raged, ash and dust choked the atmosphere, and temperatures swung wildly. In the first days and weeks, many animals that survived the initial impact died from starvation, cold, or injuries. The survivors were mostly small animals that could shelter underground, in water, or in other protected spaces. Mammals, which had been small and mostly nocturnal during the dinosaur age, were among the survivors. So were birds, crocodilians, turtles, lizards, snakes, and many amphibians. In the oceans, most plankton died, causing a collapse of marine food webs, but some fish, sharks, and bottom-dwelling invertebrates survived. After the dust settled, life slowly began to recover. The first organisms to return were opportunistic plants, ferns, and other fast-growing species that colonized the devastated landscapes. These were followed by more complex plant communities. Animals began to diversify, filling the ecological niches left empty by the dinosaurs' extinction. It took about 10 million years for biodiversity to fully recover to pre-extinction levels. During this time, mammals began their rise to dominance. In the early Paleocene, just after the extinction, mammals were still small, but by the Eocene, about 50 million years ago, they had diversified into many forms, including some as large as modern elephants. The extinction of the dinosaurs was a tragedy that destroyed millions of years of evolution, but it also created opportunities for the survivors, setting the stage for the age of mammals and ultimately for the evolution of humans. In the grand sweep of Earth's history, mass extinctions, as devastating as they are, also serve as resets that allow new groups to rise and experiment with different ways of living. Some dinosaurs may have survived for a short time after the impact. While the asteroid impact was immediately catastrophic in the immediate vicinity and had rapid global effects, it's possible that some dinosaurs survived for days, weeks, or even months in areas far from the impact site or in protected environments. The extinction wasn't instantaneous everywhere. In the Hell Creek Formation in North America, which preserves rocks from the time of the extinction, paleontologists have found a few dinosaur fossils just above the KPG boundary layer, the thin layer of iridium-rich sediment that marks the impact. This could mean that a few individual dinosaurs survived briefly in the aftermath, eking out existence in a dying world. However, the evidence is controversial, and some scientists argue these fossils might have been moved by erosion or other processes and don't truly represent post-impact survival. Even if some dinosaurs survived the initial catastrophe, they would have faced a world in collapse, with no food, extreme temperatures, and toxic air. Any survivors would have been doomed, the last representatives of a once mighty group facing inevitable extinction. The thought of these final dinosaurs wandering a devastated landscape in the days and weeks after the impact is profoundly melancholy. They were the end of a lineage that had dominated Earth for 165 million years, brought down not by any failing of their own, but by cosmic bad luck, a random rock from space ending an entire world. Birds are the dinosaurs that survived and thrived. While the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct, one lineage survived, the birds. Birds had evolved from small theropod dinosaurs during the Jurassic period, diversifying throughout the Cretaceous into many forms. When the asteroid struck, most bird species went extinct, along with their dinosaur cousins, but some survived. These survivors were likely small, generalist species that could eat a variety of foods, including seeds, which remained viable even after plants died. Birds that could fly had an advantage, able to travel long distances to find food and avoid localized devastation. Those that could survive on minimal resources, that nested on the ground or in simple shelters, and that had flexible diets were most likely to make it through. After the extinction, birds diversified rapidly, filling ecological niches left empty by the pterosaurs, which had also gone extinct. Today, there are more than 10,000 species of birds living in every habitat, from oceans to deserts to polar ice. They range in size from tiny hummingbirds weighing a few grams to ostriches weighing over 100 kilograms. They have adapted to countless lifestyles: predators, scavengers, herbivores, nectarivores, insectivores, piscivores, and more. Birds have achieved powered flight, something non-avian dinosaurs never accomplished, allowing them to exploit the aerial niche completely. In many ways, birds are more successful now than dinosaurs ever were, more diverse, more widespread, and more abundant. The sky is filled with dinosaurs every day. We just call them birds. This continuity means that dinosaurs didn't really go extinct. They transformed, adapted, and persisted, proving once again their remarkable evolutionary resilience.